Hello, and welcome back to Not Compliant Enough, the space for your workplace well-being warriors, rebels, and misfits to find that tribe, or at least find some solace in that you're not the only one. Um, it's been a while, and I'm not going to be that person that's like, oh, I haven't done it because of this, this, and this. I just don't care. I am, however, really committing to doing this at least once a week, once a fortnight, but we'll see how it goes. Um, and I feel like in a world full of so much noise, sometimes you need those moments of silence to actually, reflect and reconsider and figure out what the fuck's going on. Like the world sometimes can be just a bit of a hot mess. And I think it's really interesting from what I'm seeing in the perspective of this whole like personal brand explosion of so many people that are working for these really huge companies or really famous places. Um, like Diary of a CEO, the podcast, there's Atlassian, there's Amazon, there's all these huge companies and or very well known companies, and a lot of the people that are working for them have really lent into being consistently building their own personal brands on the side, and you can see the fruits of their labor, particularly with you know people that have been consistently doing that and then stepping away from that, I guess, that grounding or almost, um, yeah, I guess that grounding of having that full time job associated with a company that has a particular kudos to it and a particular reputation. And witnessing how much of a platform that is to then leverage that to build your personal brand is actually huge. And I don't think that we've seen anything like this ever because, and I guess it's part of the reason that I haven't really done a podcast in a while is because I started a job, and because I'd been in government for so long, like doing things for yourself in terms of a personal brand and having opinions and being on socials or any of those sorts of things is not considered something that you're able to really do, particularly working in a government organization. Like, no one is allowed to have an opinion or speak out about things, or, it's very, very taboo. And, I mean, it's part of your job to not be vocal about personal things. And I mean, sure, you can share things on LinkedIn when it's in relation to your, government department or other government departments. But when it comes to things that you personally have views and opinions about, it's almost like you're silenced in so many ways. And I think I was self silencing because I'd been conditioned in such a way, which is actually wild, right? Because, starting this podcast was about not being compliant and looking at, how people are compliant in their jobs. And yet I had moved into a different industry, and it probably wouldn't have mattered if I did this. But in myself, I thought that I couldn't, like, or that I was just so conditioned into that thinking and that behavior that I was like, oh, well, I'm working for somebody, I'm working for an organization, so I can't do that anymore. But that's just not true. And I think we're seeing so much of this through these, personal brands being built. Um, and why I'm so interested in it is because there's so many people suffering in really shitty jobs, in really shitty situations. And that's one step. It's one of the many practical steps, but it's the one step that you can probably do in the background to, make something like that work, to give you that jumping off point, to leverage, to get into something new. And I think that the fascinating thing about so much of this is that we've never seen this before. Like, I'm so interested to see what children in the next, kids today, what their, world of work or what the world of work in general looks like in the next 10, 20 years. Because with AI, with all of these industries really leaning into these products and services that are helping to increase productivity, um, and make everything a lot faster. Um, the the real crux of it is how places, like how companies and organizations are actually going to attract staff and attract people to work for them and entice them to work for a company rather than doing it for themselves. And I think that that's what we're seeing play out in real time with a lot of this personal branding stuff. Um, I'm not sure why a lot of these people are leaving these jobs, but it is a bit of a revolution. Like, it is a bit of a new kind of thing. I mean, it's something that's always happened, but I think it's not been witnessed as much. Um, you know, there's YouTube vlogs and, TikTok stories and um, Instagram stories and, people building huge platforms for leaving their corporate 9 to 5 or whatever sort of corporate type job, um, and doing it on their own and like actually pursuing something that they want to do that actually fills their soul rather than the feeling of selling their soul when having to go into a workplace each and every day. Um, and I find that so interesting. So that is a very long-winded way of, I guess maybe me trying to justify these weird long breaks. But also, I think, when it doesn't feel right, there's no point in pushing things, because you don't get great results either. So, yeah, look, it's all a journey. And I think with so many things now, you need to lean into that journey a bit more. Like, we can't outsource everything. So interestingly, I was having a chat to a friend the other day, um, and we were just talking about how the world has just shifted so much, and like just the general sense of people at the moment, well, particularly in Australia, um, there's this sense of like real kind of there's a lot of anger around, there's a lot of uncertainty. People are very clearly in survival mode. Um, it's just there's a lot of people struggling right now, and I don't think that that's just sort of within places like Australia. I think that that's in a lot of places. And I feel like we've lost a lot of the fundamentals around even just like hanging out with each other or being in a work environment and just having those um, basic levels of respect. Like, I think there's a lot of respect that is definitely missing at the moment, and I'm not sure if it's the social climate and culture of what's happening in the world right now and how that's feeding into how people treat each other in such a way that's become really short and quite combative in a lot of ways, and then also very dismissive of certain people and um, like, I guess, subsects of people, like you kind of, I guess I see it in industries where it's, look, there's very male dominated industries and, that can be a whole range of things. Um, and I think in this day and age, organizations and industries that are so stuck in yesteryear are going to be tomorrow's like Kodaks and Blockbusters you know, all these places that have held on to this belief, whether it's true or not, around how they operate. And what happens is they're so hell bent on some idea of something, and the people that are involved in that and the way things operate, that they refuse to see beyond that. And I think when you're dealing with people of an older generation, whilst there's much wisdom that can come from a different generation, there's also a short sightedness of how things were and how things used to be, and not really accepting that the world has changed in such ways that I don't even think we even realize what's going on right now in so many areas, because of the way that we interact with the world now. And I say that because I noticed when I was traveling, um, not that long ago, that you actually meet a lot less people these days in those very basic things of like going to a different country and not speaking the language and having to usually, well, is asking for directions or trying to interact with people. And with the ease of access to things like maps on your phone, as well as like Google Translate to be able to meet those cultural language barriers, which is incredibly helpful. Like, don't get me wrong, it's super helpful. Um, but I think part of those things, we're almost disconnecting from being able to connect to a lot of those cultures and experiences, even down to the basic level of having an interaction of asking for directions. And in the vast different way that we now travel, I see that we're vastly different in the way that we do business and the way that businesses are. And I've been particularly interested in how there's this, not only is it about building a personal brand, but it's also about building an audience before you're building products, because you're essentially building a distribution that's readily available rather than building a product and trying to entice people to purchase whatever it is. And it's almost like it's flipped a lot of industries, I guess, and a lot of older ways of doing marketing and those sort of ideas of how it's meant to work, like, this awareness and the funnel and all of these, it's all really changed. And I think the knock on effect of that is that you've got a lot of organizations and companies that are stuck in their ways, and they're stuck in their ways so much to the point of, it's almost like dealing with arrogance that just won't kind of see a perspective that's different to theirs. And I don't know, like it's a very it's just really interesting. And I think that it's happened in such a short space of time, particularly with the, intersection of different situations, be it, what's happening in the news, be it how people are living their lives, um, access to being able to, find like find any job once you've been laid off from different organizations or whatever. Um, the competitiveness around those sorts of things, the real lack of hope. And I think that that's what it is. There's a real lack of hope and optimism around the future and around like even the time right now. Like, it's very easy to get into this doom and gloom kind of rhetoric, because it's just everywhere. Like, I think, I mean, the one thing aside from like the lack of respect for other people that we've gotten to in a lot of ways, there's just this like, I mean, I don't like to call out a particular demographic or anything, but you know, there was a movie about it, like Grumpy Old Men, and I feel I feel like that sort of essence of like grumpy old men has kind of permeated through the collective um, environments in so many places right now. Like, there's not a lot of people having fun. Well, from what I can see, in the well, I mean, it is winter in Australia, and I'm currently in Sydney, and it hasn't stopped raining in weeks. I think we've had um, the most rain we've seen since I don't even know when, but it's been the wettest August ever. And with that, you know, obviously, people are less happy and a little bit more agitated and spend probably a bit more time inside. Um, but yeah, like, I don't know, there's something about an essence of a country and in different cultures and how you can see how people are having fun. And yeah, I was going to an event for work the other day, and I was laughing with some colleagues in, you know, in the Uber going to this event. And the Uber driver even said, he goes, as a side note, you can have some amazing conversations with Uber drivers. You can also have some very weird ones. But this was just such a lovely exchange. He was like, "Oh, you know, for you guys to be work colleagues, like it's just so nice to see you, you know, enjoying yourself and having fun and laughing. Like I don't see that very much." And it's, you know, like even in those little moments, you kind of go, "Oh wow, like really, you don't see that?" Like, you know, what, like what's going on? But also what's going on in the world that we're like maybe consuming and enjoying entertainment online, um, but we're not having that entertainment and fun like in person. And I really do feel like with the way of work and, you know, this shift of personal branding and all of these different things, and obviously, you know, technology is not going anywhere. Like that's integrated in our day to day. And it's not about this whole kind of, um, you know, work life balance, because I think people are just, you know, we're constantly connected and it's very hard to not be connected. And even if you are out living your life, like you're connected constantly. And there's a cognitive overload with that happens too, right? So it's like the emotional load that people take on for other people, and or they're sort of the go-to person that people download to. I think that we can have this cognitive overload when it comes to our digital devices and our relationships with them. Um, and it happens in such a way that you just don't even realize. I mean, you know, I think we know that um, well, a lot of people know that they're highly addicted to their phones and things like that. But it's almost become these socially acceptable addictions like work has and the phone has. Whereas if it's another type of addiction, you know, that's not so pleasant and nice. And people get like absolutely shunned for those sorts of things. So yeah, like isn't it just time that we have some fucking fun? Like, I mean, let's just have some fun again. Um, but be genuine about it, like this performative fun. And it's almost like all these performative ways that people operate. Like, I caught up with a friend the other day, and we were having a really interesting conversation because we were talking about some cultural differences and inclusion and what that looks like. Um, and it was fascinating because there's people that are genuine and there's people that are performative, and it's going to happen no matter where it is and what context it is. But you know, it's just one of those things when it feels off. Like you kind of go, oh, we're going through the motions of this, but it just doesn't feel right. Like it doesn't feel like something, well, it doesn't feel the same in the way that you've done this before, maybe with somebody else. But with that particular person, it just feels a bit off. And um, I just couldn't ascertain why. And this friend of mine was like, well, that's because they're not being real. It's performative. And I was like, fuck, of course it is. Like, of course it is. And the more performative we see people operate, the less we vibe with it. And maybe that's why we're having less laughing and having less fun in some respects. Because maybe less people are being like genuine and it's all become a bit performative. Um, so, yeah, it's a very, very interesting space. Um, I am committed to interviewing more people, particularly around, this whole kind of shift in work, how we can actually help um, to maintain our well-being in better ways, um, and beyond just the things that keep being repeated, which yet again become performative rather than tangible, helpful things based on the context of people. You know, different things work for different people. Just because certain things like meditation and whatever doesn't work for you doesn't mean that you've failed and that you can't do, you know, like this, you can't do these exercises that are meant to help your mental well-being and all the rest of it. Like it's about a holistic approach to any of these things. And so I'm committed to demonstrating that holistic approach and what that can look like for different people, through the voices of many. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you're having a fabulous week, month, year, whenever you're listening to this, wherever you're listening to this. I appreciate your time and thank you. Sending lots of love to everyone. See ya.